The Brazilian farmer who was forced to breed with aliens in 1957. What they did to him will shock you. What if I told you that in 1957, a Brazilian farmer was taken aboard a spacecraft and forced into something so disturbing that governments tried to bury it for decades? This isn't science fiction. This is the documented case of Antonio Villas-Boas, and what happened to him that night changed ufology forever. The date was October 15th, 1957. Antonio Villas-Boas was working late on his family's farm in Minas Gerais, Brazil, plowing fields under the moonlight. He was 23 years old, healthy, and had no history of mental illness. What was about to happen would turn him into one of the most credible alien abduction witnesses in history. Around 1 in the morning, Antonio noticed something strange in the sky. A red star, brighter than anything he'd ever seen, began moving toward him. At first, he thought it was an aircraft, but as it got closer, he realized this was something else entirely. The object was egg-shaped, glowing with an intense red light that hurt his eyes to look at directly. The craft descended rapidly, hovering about 50 feet above his tractor. Antonio's first instinct was to run, and that's exactly what he tried to do. But before he could escape, the tractor engine died. The lights went out. He was stranded in the middle of an empty field with something impossible hovering above him. Then they came for him. Four beings emerged from the craft. They were humanoid but wrong in every way that mattered. Gray suits that seemed to be part of their bodies. Helmets that obscured their faces. They moved with purpose, surrounding him before he could react. Antonio fought back. He punched, kicked, screamed for help that would never come. But these beings were stronger than they looked, and within seconds they had him. They dragged him toward the craft, and that's when he saw it up close. The spacecraft was unlike anything human engineers had ever constructed. Metallic, seamless, emanating a pulsing red glow that seemed alive. A ladder extended from an opening, and they forced him up into the unknown. Inside, the craft was even more disturbing. The walls seemed to emit their own light, but there were no visible light sources. The air was thick, difficult to breathe, with a strange chemical smell he couldn't identify. They led him through corridors that shouldn't have been able to fit inside the craft's exterior dimensions. The geometry was wrong, impossible. But what happened next is where this case becomes truly disturbing. They stripped him naked, every piece of clothing removed, leaving him completely vulnerable. Antonio later described feeling like a specimen, an animal being prepared for examination. The beings used some kind of sponge-like device to spread a thick liquid across his entire body. The substance was cold, viscous, and absorbed into his skin within seconds. Then came the extraction. Using a device that looked like a cup with tubes, they attached it to his chin. Antonio felt a sharp pain, then a pulling sensation as the device literally sucked his blood. He watched in horror as his own blood flowed through transparent tubes into a container. They were harvesting him, collecting biological samples for purposes he couldn't comprehend. After what felt like hours but was probably only minutes, they left him alone in the room. Antonio was terrified, disoriented, struggling to understand what was happening. That's when he noticed the smoke. Gray, thick smoke began pumping into the room from vents in the ceiling. The smell was overwhelming, nauseating. Within seconds, Antonio was violently ill, vomiting repeatedly until there was nothing left in his stomach. Was this part of the experiment? Were they testing his reactions to toxins? Or was it something more sinister, a way to weaken him for what came next? Because what came next defies everything we understand about alien encounters. The door opened again, but this time they weren't alone. A female entered the room. But calling her female doesn't quite capture what Antonio saw. She was humanoid, naked, with pale, almost translucent skin. Her hair was platinum blonde, almost white, but styled in a way that seemed deliberately alien. Her eyes were blue, but the shape was wrong, too large, too slanted upward at the corners. She was approximately 5 feet tall, with features that were simultaneously human and utterly foreign. Her body proportions were off, her arms slightly longer than they should be, her torso elongated. But the most disturbing detail? She was clearly there for a specific purpose. And here's where we need to talk about something that researchers avoided for decades. This wasn't just an abduction. This was a breeding program. The female approached Antonio, and what happened over the next hour has been documented in psychiatric evaluations, polygraph tests, and medical examinations. She didn't speak, at least not with words. Instead, she made sounds almost like growls or purrs that seemed designed to communicate intent rather than language. Antonio later described feeling simultaneously attracted and repulsed, as if his body was responding against his conscious will. They engaged in what can only be described as forced intercourse. Multiple times. Antonio later told investigators that despite his fear and confusion, his body responded in ways he couldn't control. He suspected they had drugged him with the liquid they spread on his skin, or perhaps the smoke had contained some kind of aphrodisiac. During these encounters, the female would periodically point to her stomach, then to the sky. The message was clear. She would become pregnant. The child would be taken elsewhere. Antonio was being used as genetic material for a hybrid program that had been operating in secret for who knows how long. But here's what makes this case impossible to dismiss. After it was over, after they had extracted what they needed from him, the female smiled. Not a human smile of warmth or affection. A cold, calculated smile of mission accomplished. Then she pointed to Antonio, then to her belly again, then upward to the stars. They were telling him his child would live among them. Now I want you to pause and think about something. Do you believe there's life on other planets? Not just microbes or bacteria, but intelligent civilizations capable of traveling across the cosmos. Because cases like Antonio's force us to confront an uncomfortable question. If they're here, if they've been here, what exactly are they doing with us? Leave your thoughts in the comments, because what I'm about to reveal next will challenge everything you think you know about alien agendas. The beings led Antonio through the craft one final time before releasing him. But they didn't just let him go. They gave him a tour. He later described seeing a room filled with strange symbols and markings that seemed to be a form of alien writing. He saw what appeared to be a control room with panels covered in lights that pulsed in patterns too complex to be random. Most disturbing of all, he saw another room through a partially open door. Inside were containers, tubes filled with liquid, and floating in those tubes were things that looked almost human but not quite. Fetuses in various stages of development. Hybrid children created from encounters just like his. How many other people had been brought to this craft? How many other breeding sessions had occurred? The implications are staggering. When they finally released Antonio, they pointed to the rising sun on the horizon. For hours had passed. For hours during which he had been abducted, examined, drained of blood, forced to breed with an alien female, and shown evidence of a genetic program that had likely been operating for decades, if not centuries. He was deposited back in the field near his tractor. The craft descended rapidly, its red glow fading as it disappeared into the pre-dawn sky. Antonio was left alone, naked, confused, and forever changed by an experience that would define the rest of his life. But here's where this case becomes bulletproof. Antonio didn't immediately report what happened. He was ashamed, confused, afraid people would think he was insane. He kept quiet for weeks, suffering in silence. Then the physical symptoms began. Burns appeared on his skin where the liquid had been applied. Radiation burns, according to the doctors who later examined him. He developed severe nausea that lasted for weeks. His eyes became sensitive to light, causing him pain whenever he went outside during the day. These weren't psychological symptoms. These were physical effects that corroborated his story. When Antonio finally came forward and told his story to journalist and ufologist João Martins, the details were so specific, so consistent, that even the most hardened skeptics had to admit something had happened to this man. He underwent psychiatric evaluation. The doctors found him completely sane. He took a polygraph test. He passed. His medical records documented the radiation burns and other physical evidence. The Brazilian Air Force investigated. They found unusual soil samples at the site where Antonio claimed the craft had landed. Radiation readings were elevated. Something had been there, something that left physical traces behind. But governments don't want you to know about cases like this. They don't want you connecting the dots between Antonio's encounter and thousands of other similar cases reported around the world. Because if the public understood the scope of what's really happening, the implications would be catastrophic. Think about it. If alien civilizations are conducting breeding programs with humans, then we're not the apex species on this planet. We're livestock. We're being used for genetic experiments without our consent. Our children taken to be raised on other worlds or used for purposes we can't even imagine. Antonio's case isn't unique. Researcher Dr. David Jacobs has documented hundreds of similar abduction cases involving breeding programs. Women report being taken, having eggs harvested, being shown hybrid children on subsequent abductions. Men report encounters almost identical to Antonio's, forced breeding sessions with alien females. The patterns are too consistent to be coincidence. The physical evidence is too compelling to dismiss. Something is happening, and it's been happening for a very long time. Antonio lived until 1992, and until his death, he never changed his story. Not once. He gained nothing from coming forward except ridicule and disbelief. He lost friends, faced mockery, but he stood by what happened to him that night because he knew it was real. In his final interviews, Antonio said something that should chill every person watching this video. He said he sometimes wondered if his alien child was still alive, somewhere out there among the stars. He wondered if it thought about him, if it knew it had a human father working on a farm in Brazil. Can you imagine living with that knowledge? Knowing you have a child you'll never meet, created through an encounter you had no choice in, raised in a civilization so advanced that we can barely comprehend their technology? The Antonio Villas-Boas case isn't just one man's story. It's evidence of an agenda that's been operating in the shadows since before recorded history. Ancient texts describe sky beings coming down and mating with humans. The Book of Enoch talks about the Watchers who took human wives and produced hybrid offspring. Hindu texts describe the Nagas, serpent beings who interbred with humans to create royal bloodlines. These aren't myths. They're historical records of the same thing that happened to Antonio in 1957. The technology might look different, but the agenda is the same. They're mixing our DNA with theirs, creating something new, something in between. Why? That's the question that haunts researchers. Are they trying to save their dying race by infusing it with human genetics? Are they creating a hybrid species designed to replace us when climate change or war makes Earth uninhabitable? Or is the truth even darker than we can imagine? Some researchers believe the hybrids are being prepared for an integration event. A moment when humanity learns the truth about our cosmic neighbors and these hybrid children are introduced as a bridge between our species. Others think the hybrids are being used as sleeper agents, placed in positions of power across the globe, influencing human affairs from within our own governments and institutions. The evidence keeps mounting. More people coming forward with similar stories. More physical evidence that can't be explained away. More government documents being leaked that acknowledge the phenomenon even as official sources deny everything. You need to understand something crucial. The Antonio Villas-Boas case was investigated extensively because it happened before the government cover-up became sophisticated. Modern abduction cases are dismissed, ridiculed, buried under layers of disinformation. But Antonio's case slipped through because it was documented by credible journalists, examined by medical professionals, and investigated before the mechanism of denial was fully in place. This is why older cases are so important. They show us what's really happening before the narrative was controlled, before witnesses were discredited as attention seekers or mentally ill. Antonio was a simple farmer with no reason to lie, no benefit from coming forward, and physical evidence that backed up every detail of his impossible story. So what does this mean for us? It means that right now, somewhere on Earth, someone is being taken. Someone is undergoing the same traumatic experience Antonio endured. Someone is being used as genetic material for a program that operates beyond human oversight or consent. And most of them will never come forward because they know they won't be believed. The Antonio Villas-Boas case proves that alien abductions aren't just psychological phenomena or sleep paralysis or mass hysteria. They're real events with real physical consequences. documented by credible witnesses who have nothing to gain and everything to lose by coming forward. If you found this information disturbing, good. You should be disturbed, because this isn't entertainment, this isn't science fiction. This is documentation of an ongoing operation that's been happening for decades and possibly centuries. We are not alone. We've never been alone. And the beings visiting us have an agenda that involves our genetic material in ways we're only beginning to understand. Make sure you subscribe to this channel because we're going to keep uncovering these cases. Keep connecting the dots that they don't want connected. The truth is out there, and it's far more disturbing than any government wants you to know. Next, we're diving into the Betty and Barney Hill case, the first widely publicized alien abduction in the United States that shares shocking similarities with Antonio's encounter. Drop a comment below telling us what you think really happened to Antonio that night. Was it a breeding program, a genetic experiment, or something even darker that we haven't figured out yet? The truth is waiting to be uncovered, and you're part of that discovery.